Hello everybody, welcome to my studio. I'm going to give you a studio tour today. I just never done that before for whatever reason. And it does change a lot, but I feel like it's in a good stopping place right now. So I'll just kind of give an overview of everything with as little details as possible so this isn't super long. If you don't know, my brother and I have a band called The Solution. We also have another band called 1225 that makes Christmas music, both of which are electronic. The Solution is kind of synth pop. We've been working together most of our lives because we're brothers, and most of this gear we've just gathered over the years and held on to a lot of it, and probably didn't hold on to a lot of it. But I'll give you an overview of everything. I'm going to have future videos on how my audio setup works and a video on how my MIDI setup works because they're both slightly involved. So I thought I'd give some insight on how I do it. So I hope you enjoy the video. Please leave any comments or questions below. Thank you. Okay, we'll start with the keyboard wall. Cool side note, I love the keyboard wall. I got it off the internet, as you might imagine, this idea to do it. So the brackets are these Standtastic brackets that work with their keyboard stands. That's the brand name. And they happen to fit into these construction U-shaped metal, I don't know the exact name of it. So we put some horizontal braces across the wall in a few spots and screwed them into the studs, and then we screwed the vertical rails spaced the right distance apart for the two different widths here. And then you just buy these Standtastic things. They're actually pretty easy to find now. They used to not be. And they hook in there and it's really sturdy, and yeah. So we'll start on top with the Roland JD800. And that's from the early 90s, I believe. I've got a couple cards for it plugged in the back of it. I did not buy that new. I bought it used from the eBay. It's a keyboard I always wanted, and I finally got one. So, yeah, cool. Next one down is the Roland XP50 music workstation, and it's lovely two-line LED LCD display. So we used this forever to write basically all of our music, believe it or not, with this tiny screen. We used to sequence all of our songs on it. We had like a rack full of Romplers, which we have all of them still, and that's how we programmed all the songs, and would then move them to the computer to record vocals and stuff, but not anymore. Don't use it very much, kind of just use it the occasional live thing if we just need some generic basic sounds, that sort of thing. Next down is, lurking in the shadows here, is the Link LN1000 keytar in all of its plastic glory here. So it's a keyboard controller, doesn't have sounds. This is probably the oldest thing in this room that we still have, and it still works. This was, I believe, early 90s when we bought it new, and these were like promoted by Jan Hammer. And a fun fact, since I'm a Pet Shop Boys fan, this is the same model that Chris Lowe played in the Performance tour. So if you have your Performance DVD or Laserdisc like I used to have, you can see the same thing. He had some kind of wireless thing hooked to it though. But ours plugs into this rack unit that I have in the closet that it basically provides the power through the MIDI cable and then takes the MIDI and outputs it out of the back of this rack thing. So yeah, cool and kind of weird. Next down here is the Roland VP550 vocal and ensemble keyboard. The ensemble part is just kind of some generic kind of sounds, like there's strings and jazz scat. I don't believe we've ever used those. We bought it for the vocal stuff. So it's got a mic and a line level input. You can put stuff through it and run it through the vocoders, the various choir sounds. We bought this for the purpose of making our first album, our first 1225 album, which is our Christmas albums, because we wanted everything to have an unnatural vocal sound to it, and it does, and it's worked great, and we've used it on other stuff too. Next down here, this is a shelf I built because I needed more room for narrower stuff, and it matches the lovely rack I built also. It's the same wood and everything. This is the Waldorf KB37 keyboard. It holds Eurorack modules, which I'm not going to go into detail on the Eurorack stuff in this video, but I've got a couple wavetable oscillators and an analog oscillator and stuff in there, and yeah. Over here is the Korg SQ1 little sequencer, the Moog Workstat, their little put together kit deal with the expander, so it allows you to plug the 3.5mm jacks into it instead of just little patch points. And then the Roland VT3, you can see it in glowing green here. That's the voice transformer, more transforming stuff for vocals. All right, we're moving over to the right side of the keyboard wall, the narrower side. On top here is a Moog Little Fatty Stage 2, which was my first foray into analog synths. I bought this the year, it was like before Christmas. They were giving away the CP251 CV processor with the purchase, so me and tons of other people bought it. I did have later, when I was going to Asheville for Moog Fest, I took it there and they put the CV out mod on it. I don't think you can see it, but it's on this side of it. That's cool. Next up, we've got the Korg ARP Odyssey. This is from the first round that they brought it out, and I got the one that's like the Rev 1 look, the white. I think this may have been also the first synth I ever pre-ordered because I was really excited to get it, and I do love this synth. And I also really love the case it came with. It kind of looks like a suitcase. It's really cool. I know that's silly, but I really liked it. Next up is the Moog Grandmother, which is awesome. And at the bottom is the Korg MS-20M. That is the MS-20 without the keyboard. That was a kit. There was no soldering involved. It was just like a put together screwdrivers, you know, stuff. And I think it's unique in the fact that it does have, you know, they usually just have their hertz per volt CV ins, but this one also has volt per octave in built in, which I don't think that's common on the MS-20s. It also has this funky molt on the front that allows you to adapt, you know, 3.5 to 1/4 inch and vice versa. And lurking behind there, just sitting there, is a little iRig Keys Midi controller. Next up is the table under the keyboards. So on the left we have the Korg Monologue in blue. Not much to say about that. I do like it, and it's cool that it has batteries. Didn't think I'd ever use it, but it's cool to just unplug it and grab some headphones and set wherever you want to in the house and play some synth. And then next up I've got the Dreadbox Erebus 3 and the Dreadbox Hypnosis. I've got the special edition Erebus 3 that's got the retro 80s look to it that matches the Hypnosis. See? Very cool synths, love those two also. Over here is one of my newer deals, the Analog Solution Impulse Command. It's a synth, sequencer, craziness. It's a little bizarre and super awesome sounding. Yeah, I love the sound of Analog Solution stuff, so I was really excited to finally get something by them. And here's the Moog Mother 3-tier rack with the DFAM, the Mother 32, and the Subharmonicon. And usually I just have them patched up so they're all synced with each other, and all their audio outs are going over to the Eurorack mixer. And this is a little Moog case that matches those. It used to be in the rack before I got the Subharmonicon, but it's just got some extra stuff that supplements those deals, just for fun. And at the bottom, which is hard to see, I've got some pedals. This is my bass pedal board. I'm a bass player. And various other things. I got the TC Electronic June 60 and the Dreadbox Epsilon and Electron analog drive. The crash pad and super space drum from Electron. Those are super cool. And then, it's not Electron. Electro Harmonics crash pad and super space drum. And the 8-step program from Electro Harmonics also. All cool things. Maybe I'll make some more videos about my pedals because I do love pedals. Okay, and that brings us over to the massive rack and Euro rack modular setup. So my Euro rack started with this case that my dad and I built and filled it up pretty quick. And then he built me this case with the cool angle and everything. It's 12U, 168 HP, and it's pretty much full also. I built this slim one in the middle. It's also 168 HP, which happens to be the exact size of all 4 of these Roland digital processors and the System 1M. And they're all kind of power hogs if you plug them into your Euro rack power supply. So I just decided to build this case just for them, and I just have their regular old wall warts that they came with plugged into them. Then I don't have to worry about the Euro rack power being annoying and all that stuff. So it fits in nicely in between. And then I've got this Synthrotech Power Lunch, it's called. It's one of these ABS plastic deals that's super strong, and you got a lid that flips over. A little portable deal with a 1U mixer and stuff on it. That's pretty cool. Also on top, I've got the Moog MF104M Mooger, and that's the sought after delay with Midi sync. Super cool. I leave it up here, and it's always patched in to one of the effects sins on the mixer, so I can use it. And then there's my mixer, which is a PreSonus 16.0.2. It's the original one with the Firewire, and in fact it used to be our main audio interface for quite some time, when we were still using a rack PC with Firewire and all that kind of stuff. And now I just use it as an analog mixer, just for jamming and just routing signals through it. And we still use it live, and use its effects for our vocals and stuff. There's a couple of Rolly light pads, yeah, Rolly light pads that I've got plugged in the computer if I want to use them. All right, and that brings us to the 19-inch racks. Actually, this is a fairly new addition also. I built this 3-bay rack. I used to have a portable rack with a bunch of SKB racks stacked on top of it. Clear over here, had wires running all around the room for all the stuff. And that's why there's so much excess cable laying in the corners, because I didn't need all that length anymore. So I built this so it would be all together and next to the desk. So that made it way better in order to work on stuff. So on the left side, got a power supply, and then I've got the other 6 Mooger. That's the ones that aren't the delay. The low pass filter, ring mod, phaser, Midi Murph, Freakbox, and cluster flux. And as you can see, I've got patch bays, and every patch point is going to the patch bays. And that was a big labor of love. Quite some years ago I did that, because a lot of them require like a normalization and some resistors and stuff to make them behave correctly. So that's a whole nother subject. There's actually a box with a bunch of potentiometers plugged into the back of the patch bays that are all set so the pedals behave normally without anything being plugged in. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And then there's the CP251 I was talking about in its rack kit. So the next section over, I've got a rack drawer here, which is stuck, there we go, with the BeatStep Pro on it, with all the MIDI sync and all the cables plugged in the back, and just setting up here on top so I can plug them into the modular anytime I want to. And get that out of the way, and then another power supply, and then the iConnectivity Mio 10 which is the 10 in, 10 out DIN MIDI, plus a bunch of other network MIDI stuff. And below it is another thing that's maybe as old as the Link Keytar. It's the Digital Music Corp MX8 MIDI Patchbay, and it's got like 6 MIDI ins and 8 MIDI outs, and it's a Patchbay and MIDI processor. And I've just basically got it daisy chained with the interface, the Mio 10, just so I have more inputs and outputs. So it's still plugging away after all these years also. All right, and underneath that is the Moog Minotaur and Moog Siren, and the official rack kits for them actually only holds one of them, and it's like in the middle with a bunch of space on either side. And when I was building this rack, I noticed how the two side by side are the exact right width, so I made my own rack ears for them. I bought these rack ears, and they were really deep, so I cut the extra off and used that metal to hook them together in the middle, and it takes up half as much space as if I would have used the official ones, so that worked really well, and it looks cool too. Under that, I've got the Moog Slim Fatties, the white one and the black one. They're the same thing, just two different colors, and they're actually the same as the Little Fatty, and you can poly chain them all together, which I've done. Sounds really good. And at the bottom are two of those Romplers I was talking about, the Cork Triton rack and the Roland XV5080, and it's got a bunch of the expansion boards in it too, and those are two of them that we used to use all the time. And they're in here. I actually haven't even plugged them in yet, so yeah. All right, and that brings us to the far right side, which is all the audio processing and interfaces and stuff. So starting at the top, we've got a Furman power conditioner. That's another thing I've had forever. I bought it with my very first rack, so it's probably almost as old as those other old things. And underneath it is the TC Electronic Finalizer Express, which is a mastering processor. We've had this forever. Probably almost all of our recordings have been mastered through this. It's like multi-band compression and limiting and this and that. We've always just used the the digital inputs and outputs on the back through to the sound of the audio interface. And underneath that are my 500 series racks, and I've got two of them, and they are Black Lion Audio. And what's cool about them is they have these TT Patchbays on them, and analog XLR ins and outs on the back, and DB25 ins and outs on the back. And so I bought these because of the Patchbay. You can basically chain together the modules in the analog domain before you send it back to your computer, etc. And I've also got TT to 1/4 inch cables, so I can actually patch it into whatever. Euro rack, if I'm jamming, I can use some of the processors or whatever. So in there I've got the Black Lion Audio Auteur Mark II mic preamp, two DBX 520s, which are de-essers, two DBX 560As, which are compressor limiters, and one Mag Audio, I think that's how you pronounce it, MAAG, EQ4, which sounds amazing. And then two blank spaces for something, I don't know what. And then underneath it, I've got the lovely AMS Neve RMX16, which is the famous reverb that they made into a 500 series. It takes up 3 spaces. It is ginormous, but totally worth it. Next to that are the now discontinued Moog 500 series. That's called the Ladder. It's a filter. This is a analog delay. It's got MIDI sync and MIDI control over an app too. So that's cool. And then next to that is the Maris Hydra, which is a pitch effect and delay. It's really funky and weird. And then last but not least is the Alicia Expressor 500, which is a stereo compressor, and it sounds awesome on drum buses and mix bus, whatever. Sounds really cool. Okay, and then there's some empty space. Amazing, huh? And then there's the 2 Patchbays, which look really messy but are very organized. Some stuff's not labeled correctly. I'm waiting to print new labels for them. But basically every synthesizer goes into the Patchbay. It's got outs into all the mixer channels, so I can listen to stuff and jam or whatever, and outs into some of the audio interfaces and stuff. So below that, I'll turn these on so you can see them. My audio interfaces, we've got the PreSonus Quantum, which is a Thunderbolt 2 interface, and underneath it is the PreSonus Quantum 4848, which is a 48 channel Thunderbolt 2 interface that has a whole bunch of dB25 on the back. So these things plug directly into it. The output of the Euro rack out of my WMD performance mixer has dB25 outputs, so those can all go straight into the computer, which is awesome. And then above that is a little Behringer, I think it's called the ADA something or another. It's basically an 8-channel preamp with a 8-at output that plugs into the Quantum, so it just gives me 8 more analog channels. With all those channels, I almost have enough to have most of the synths going into the computer all the time. So that's handy, and there's tons of 8-at I/O on the 2 Quantums, so I could always add more of those 8-channel dudes to give me more channels if I really wanted to. All right, we've made it to the desk. So, computer is a MacBook Pro. A couple years ago, it's got all the Thunderbolt 3/USB-C ports on it, and when it's hooked to the studio, they're all filled up with hard drives and audio interfaces and USB stuff. The monitor is some sort of Samsung 4K monitor. I don't know the model number or anything. And then our studio monitors are old school Event 2020 BAS bi-amped powered monitors. The original ones, and it's actually the only studio monitors we've owned. So yeah, we've had those, been around a long time. And we do have a subwoofer, which is an M-Audio SBX10, I think it's called, powered subwoofer. And then on the desk, I've got my trusty old Roland A70 Midi controller. It's a 76 key controller, fits perfectly on the desk. It's pretty massive by today's standards of MIDI controllers. It does have some sort of expansion slot to add sounds, which I never have put in it. Used to use it exclusively live because it has 4 outputs and I could hook all those sound modules to it and all those things. Probably not gonna use it live anymore, it's very massive. But yeah, it works great as a MIDI controller on the desk, that's for sure. And over here I've got my hardware MIDI sequencer with the Squark Pyramid. And there it is. And a couple hard drives. So then we will pan over here, and what's this but more keyboards. So I've got the Dave Smith Instruments, or Sequential as it's now known, the Prophet Rev 2, and it is the 8-voice version. I do fully intend on adding the card to give it 16 voices someday. And then I'll stand up here, and the newest addition at the moment to the studio is the Modal Argon 8X, which is the 61 key Argon 8. And sitting on top of it right now, I have the Rolly Seaboard block. And since this responds to MPE, through some finagling in the computer, you can get this talking to it in MPE, which is pretty cool because they have a bunch of patches in there made for that. All right, and over here we got the random green cart, and mostly it's MIDI controllers. Now, I don't leave them hooked up all the time because I don't use them all the time, but I've got the original Arturia Spark, the full-size one. Connects to the software Spark, the drum machine. It's really cool. It actually works really well. And then a headphone amplifier, Samson. We kind of set the mic up over here when we record, so I just leave the headphone amplifier hooked up. Got some more Rolly stuff. Down on this shelf, I've got the original Arturia Beat Step, and also the Novation, more old school, Novation Remote Zero SL. I think they made a keyboard version of this too. But again, this is what I used for live forever and ever and ever. As part of my live setup to control effects in Ableton Live and stuff when we play live. Let's see, and down on the bottom I've got two Novation launch pads. They are both the OG launch pads. One of them's white, one of them's black. The white one's kind of, you don't see that one very often. It was like some sort of special edition. And then I've got Korg Monotrons, all three of them, and a Monotribe. Another fun little deal. And up above, like I said, I'm a bass player. This is my old carbon 5-string I've had forever. And over here I've got a Fender Jazz bass that's from the 70s. I believe it's about as old as I am, though we've never had it appraised and it's in crazy good condition, so someday I should probably do that. I also have an acoustic 4-string. The mic we use pretty much all the time now. Haven't had it for all that long, is a Blue mic, the brand, and it is kind of blue also. I can't remember which model it is, but great vocal mic. And I have a little shield thingy we put behind it to make it not sound so roomy, though this room is pretty dead because there's so much stuff in it. Here's some bonus random footage from my messy closet. So the rest of the rack stuff, it's not out. Here's the other two of those Rumpler sound modules I was talking about. We've got a EMU Proteus 2000 and Oddity 2000. They do kind of work still. The Proteus's encoder knob is a mess, and I actually bought a replacement, so I've got to desolder it and put it in. I've just been putting it off because it looks hard. And the Oddity isn't really working. I've been trying to sort out, after changing the battery, it won't boot up anymore, so it's going to be kind of involved if I'm going to be able to fix it. And then we got this ancient Boss line mixer and effects processor, and these were like keyboard mixers for a zillion years when we used to play live a lot more and a long time ago. And then these two old Behringer digital processors, the Ultracurve and the Ultradyne Pro. It's like an EQ and stuff, and like a multi-band compressor and stuff. And then our other mic, it's upside down, is a CAD E200 we've had forever, but we pretty much use the Blue for vocal recording nowadays. So, closing thoughts on my tour. I hope you enjoyed it, and I guess I'll say some pros and cons. The pro is obviously having the space for this. This is my house, extra bedroom, so feel really lucky to be able to have the space for it. And I love the floor we put in. It's like laminate flooring. Looks really nice. We painted it how we wanted it. Another thing I absolutely love is we have Philips Hue lights. All four of these spotlight track lights are Hue lights. They can be any color. Look really super cool. And yeah, so if I were to say some cons, it would be the obvious one is space. I'd love to have more space. Really, there's only enough room for my brother and I to work in here on music, and not many other people. Love to be able to work with more people or something along those lines someday. I'd love to have like a bigger mixing desk too. Some sort of proper analog something or another would be really cool to have. And yeah. Hope you enjoyed the tour. I like watching these kind of things myself, so I thought I'd make one. And if you have any questions or comments, obviously leave them below. And stay tuned to our channel. I'm hoping to do an overview of our audio setup and an overview of our MIDI setup, because I feel like they're a little unique and complicated, overly complicated, but I have it set up so basically we can record properly with the computer and stuff and make songs, but it's also set up so I can just leave the computer off and jam with, sequencers and modular and that kind of stuff with no computer. And oftentimes that yields stuff that we later use for songs. So yeah, so it's set up both ways. It's really cool. So hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.